Hi Magic Lovers, it's Tracy Partridge-Johnson back again for another reading from Book 2, The Kidnapping King, in my fantasy fiction series, Jack and the Magic Hat Maker. So happy Halloween, happy Halloween. I hope you're doing something fun. I'd love to hear what you've got planned for the weekend. We're just planning to hand out goodies to the little trick-or-treaters that come to our door, but I hope that you're all having fun. I would love, love, love to see photos of kids in costumes. That would be such fun. So anyway, if you have a chance, take a minute and drop me a message down below and let me know what you've got going on for Halloween. Aside from that, I don't have too much of an update, other than to say that I am still working on book 3, Ross and Faith. We'll see if I'm going to be able to get it out in time for holidays this year. I've kind of had to back burner it a little bit because I was working on getting out the workbook for book 1. Oh, here it is. I do have it. I was going to say I wasn't prepared, but I am actually. Look this is something new. Look what I got since the last time I did one of these videos. I got the workbook. Sorry about that glare from the light, but anyway, yeah, I got the workbook. See that? So excited for book 1. It's almost, well, it's 130 pages. I reformatted it, and we'll see if I'm going to upload the new version. But anyhow, it's great. It's got all kinds of like art in here, some coloring pages. There's a whole answer key in the back. And I went through every single chapter of the book and asked, questions, like multiple choice questions. And I tried to come up with some fun potential or possible answers. And there's a word puzzle in here. Where is it? Anyway, lots of fun stuff. So that's something new. So it's a companion. It's a student workbook. It's a companion to go with book 1. So yeah, so that's exciting. So anyhow, I took a little break away from writing on Ross and Faith to get that ready to go. So that is available on Amazon. I'll put a link down below so you can go check that out directly. But that's lots of fun. It's great for people, kids, and adults. Honestly, even as the author, I had to go back through the different chapters to make sure I got the answers right for a lot of these questions. So it's kind of fun. But it's great for kids as parents are reading to kids, or as the kids are going through the book themselves for reading retention. It's super great for classrooms if teachers want to read the book to their class, especially like grades 3 through 6, especially 2 through 6 probably would work. But anyhow, that's lots of fun. So I took a break away from writing on Ross and Faith to get that ready to go, and it is available and now on Amazon. So, and I'll see about getting it uploaded to other online retailers as well, but right now it's just exclusively at Amazon, so you can get that. So I'm pretty excited about that. So, but anyhow, that kind of pushed back my writing on Ross and Faith. We'll see. I'm not too optimistic, honestly, that it will be ready to go before holidays this year, if not first part of next year. So, but I'm still working on it, and I've made quite a bit of progress, and we'll see. We'll see. So anyway, I'd be interested to hear, how many of you are anxiously awaiting book 3. Have you made it through books 1 and 2 already, and you're ready for book 3? Let me know. Supply and demand and all that. The more people who want it, the more incentivized I'll feel to get it written and ready to go. So anyhow, all that aside, let me go ahead and pick up reading on The Kidnapping King from where we were last time. This episode we'll be reading at least chapter 3. There you are. At least chapter 3, Jack and Ethan, possibly chapter 4. We'll see how long this takes. So Okay. Jack and Ethan, Dublin, Ireland, present day. Master Ethan, the room just next to your brother's is available. Arthur turned to look at the two boys walking behind him. There is an adjoining door, if that will be suitable. That's great, Arthur, Ethan said. The butler stopped in front of the doorway, his hand extending an invitation into the room. Oh, this will be awesome! Jack dashed through the opening to his own room, then, turning to the left, grabbed hold of the brass doorknob on the door in that wall and opened. I've been wondering where this door led. He met Ethan's gaze as he stepped through into Ethan's bedroom. This is perfect! Thanks, Artie! He looked toward the butler, who was standing in Ethan's doorway. Unusual that you don't have any clothing or personal items with you, Master Ethan. Let's get you settled for the evening, and we can plan a shopping trip into town for tomorrow morning. The butler looked questioningly in Ethan's direction. That's fine. I'm not worried about it. Ethan turned to face Jack. I want to see that portrait of our grandmother. Where is it? Oh, yeah! Jack looked at Arthur. Would you mind if I show Ethan around a bit, Artie? Bill's face appeared behind the butler. Yeah, that's a great story, Ethan. We'll have to fill you in on the details. Bart burst through the doorway behind Jack. Of course, Master Jack. It has been an eventful evening, and it is rather late. What say we head down to the kitchens for a snack before bed? Master Ethan can view the painting on the way, and then it might be best to give him the tour tomorrow. Arthur looked in Jack's direction with an eyebrow raised. Right, good thinking. Jack grabbed Ethan by the arm, and they all headed out into the hallway toward the main staircase. 1 hour later. I'm stuffed, Bart said, as the three boys turned the corner from the sitting room to view the wide open staircase leading to the upper levels of the home. The portrait of Lydia McPaden was immediately visible on the wall to the left. Me too, Jack grabbed his stomach and groaned. Ethan strode across the foyer and stopped, looking up at the portrait. I still can't believe she's been missing for 24 years, but is somehow contacting you through that strange telescope. He turned to look at Jack. I know, pretty wild, huh? Jack shook his head back and forth. I'd love to see how you do that. Ethan looked down at his brother, an eyebrow raised. You know, use the telescope. Bill glanced at Arthur, and they exchanged a worried look as the two of them came to a stop behind the boys. I think it's time we called it a night, Bill said, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder and nudging him toward the staircase. There's plenty of time for that in the days ahead. Yes, boys, it's been a tiring evening. Let's settle in for the night. More excitement will wait for the morning, Arthur said, and shaking their heads in agreement, they all began their ascent up the stairs. Arriving just outside their bedrooms, in the upper hallway of the mansion, Jack turned to Ethan. You're going to love that bed. The sheets smell amazing, he said, and they both grinned and turned into their rooms, shutting the doors behind them. Jack quickly changed out of his street clothes into his pajamas and was heading for his bed when he realized, I'm not even tired. I'm actually pretty charged up right now. I mean, I haven't seen Ethan for 9 years. And right now, he is just on the other side of that wall. What am I thinking? He turned away from his bed and dashed to the connecting door between their two rooms. Opening it, Jack barged energetically into his brother's bedroom. Hey, Ethan, I'm not even sleepy. Ethan stood shirtless, his muscular back toward Jack, but he spun around abruptly when he heard his little brother's voice. Jack's mouth dropped open, his eyes were wide, and his brows shot up high on his forehead. There, in the middle of Ethan's chest, suspended from a black leather cord, was a large, glowing pendant. The stone was a vibrant shade of sapphire blue, and it pulsated with a cool light from within. The bauble held Jack's attention for only a moment, because just as he was staring at it, from the corner of his eye, he was distracted by something else materializing behind Ethan. A large, shimmering oval appeared and was suspended there in mid-air. "What the?" Jack stopped, frozen in his tracks. "You little rat! You really screwed things up," Ethan hissed. His eyes were wild and shot around the room quickly, as if searching for something. "Guess they'll just have to figure it out," he said, throwing his hands in the air. Before Jack had time to process what was happening, Ethan lunged forward and grabbed hold of Jack by the arm. He turned him forcefully around and dragged him, kicking and screaming, into the portal. Chapter 4. Pirates and Prisoners. Indian Ocean, off the coast of India, 1879. "Hey, lady, come on, let us out." The voice was muffled but insistent, and it roused Lydia out of her reminiscing. She shook her head, turning away from the sea, to gaze across the ship's deck at the opening of the prisoner's hold. Dirty, scabbed fingers were grasping at the bars as the pleas were emanating from its depths. Sam made a wide berth, skirting around the opening as she came to stand next to Lydia. "I hate listening to them," she said, placing her hands over her ears. "Well, it is their ship," Lydia began. "We can't really blame them for complaining, even though they are quite the frightening lot." She looked down at the girl, who was scrunching her nose up and squeezing her eyes shut tightly. "Still, I'm tired of their nasty slurs every time we come up on deck. It's disgusting." Sam stomped her foot. "I wish they would just shut up." Lydia tipped her head to the side, a small grin forming at the corners of her mouth. "Well, you could do something about that, if you really wanted to, you know." She winked at Sam, and the girl opened her eyes and bit her lip. "I don't know," she said. "It doesn't seem right." Lydia pursed her lips. "It's your choice, but you do need practice, and it really wouldn't hurt anything," she urged. "Girlie! Hey, you! Yeah, you! Come on over here and lift that latch. I promise I'll make it worth your while." Sam looked up at Lydia, then turned and slowly walked to where the voice was coming from. "Are you talking to me?" she asked, gazing down into a grizzled face, beady dark eyes peering up at her. "Yeah, that's it. Just lift that latch there and set us free." His mouth was filled to overflowing with brown-stained, crooked teeth, and Sam could smell the stench of sweat and feces arising from the depths of the hold. Lifting her hands in the man's direction, Sam uttered a command, and a burst of orange and gold sparks emerged from her fingertips, and immediately his voice was silenced. The pirate covered his mouth with his hand, his eyes wild, brows high on his forehead. Sam watched as he repeatedly opened and closed his mouth, shaking his head back and forth as though trying to get water out of his ears. Turning and walking again to stand by Lydia, she grinned just a little. "That is better. It won't be long now until we disembark anyhow, and not having to listen to him for even that short time will be a blessing." What kind of mischief are you girls up to? A deep British voice asked from behind them. Lydia and Sam spun around to face Joseph Bunko Kelly, eyeing them with a twinkle in his hazel eyes. Oh, Uncle Joe! The girl wrapped her arms around his thick waist and hugged him tightly. Grabbing hold of both shoulders with his big, hairy hands, Bunko gently pushed her away and held her at arm's length, staring into her sky blue eyes. Samantha Jo Kelly, he began. Are you playing tricks on our guests? He asked, and stood silent, watching her. Sam started. It was my fault, Lydia interjected. I encouraged her. After all, she does need to practice. And those men are awfully obnoxious. Just listen. And she paused, cocking her head to one side. Isn't that such an improvement? She looked down at Sam, and they both began to giggle uncontrollably. Yes, all right, it is much nicer not having to listen to their shouting and complaining, Bunko began. But you must reverse that spell when we put down anchor. He glanced sideways at his niece. Can't leave them mute, after all. Deal! Samantha stuck her hand out, and Bunko shook it in agreement. Now wander off, lassie. I need to speak with the lady here for a moment. And he waved at her with the back of his hand. He watched until Sam was out of earshot, then looked at Lydia. Once we disembark and get settled into our lodgings, I'll reach out to my contacts to see if we can get some help with your situation, he said. Lydia nodded her head and smiled, her eyes soft and warm with appreciation. We're only at 17 minutes. I think I'll go ahead and read one more chapter. Those two were short. Chapter 5, Crash Landing. Stockholm, Sweden, present day. His arrival was less than gracious, landing on his backside behind the large ebony table, then skittering across the glossy wooden floor like a ball player sliding into home base. The flannel pajamas he wore polished a smooth path behind him until his foot slammed into the leg of a chair, which brought his momentum to a screeching halt. Jack looked around, confused. The room was unfamiliar. There was nothing recognizable as he searched the space until his eyes came to rest upon his captor, Ethan. What have you done? Jack closed his eyes and slowly shook his head back and forth. Then, jumping to his feet, he dashed across the room to where his brother stood, staring down at him with a sardonic smirk on his face. Jack balled his hands into tight little fists and slammed them into Ethan's chest with all his might. Whoa there, little brother, Ethan said, grasping both of Jack's wrists and pulling them away from his body. Do you really think you could take me like that? Seriously? He shoved Jack away and looked down at him, his sapphire blue eyes sparkling. An amused grin was turning his mouth up at the corners. Seduced! Grandpa got that right, Jack spat at him, enraged. You are their little puppet. Whatever you have to tell yourself, Jack. Ethan pushed his fingers through his black curls to get them out of his face. Inez wants to see you. Ethan grabbed Jack by the arm, pulling him toward the door. Get your freaking hands off of me, Jack shouted, and he yanked away as hard as he could. But it was no use. Ethan was almost twice his size in height and had almost twice his size in weight and had several inches on him in height as well. Ethan stopped and stared down at him. Look, we can do this one of two ways. You can either walk like a big boy, or I'll pick you up and carry you. Which is it going to be? Jack wiped his forehead with the other hand and stared directly into Ethan's eyes. He was seething. "Ugh!" He tried pulling away again with no luck. "Ugh! Ugh! Ugh!" He tried repeatedly. "Jerk!" he yelled. And then it started. He couldn't breathe. His chest was tight and his throat was constricting. He reached down for his pocket and the realization struck. Oh no, I don't have my inhaler. His eyes were wild, scanning the room. He started clawing at Ethan's chest. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Ethan asked, letting go of Jack's arm. His forehead was creased and his lips were pressed together into a tight line. "Inhaler! Asthma! Can't breathe!" Jack gasped. "Get help!" He fell to his knees, placing his head between them. Ethan ripped the door open and began yelling, "Help! Someone help!" He dashed into the hallway and glanced around frantically, bending over the railing. He looked down on the main foyer. Flamel stepped out of the dining room and stared up at him. "Master Ethan, what is it?" "My brother. It's my brother, Jack. He's having a bad asthma attack. He doesn't have his inhaler. We need help. Fast." Flamel put his hand in the air, nodding in Ethan's direction. "Right away. I'm on it." He pulled a cell phone from his jacket pocket and dialed a number, then spoke briefly before looking back at Ethan. "An ambulance is on the way," he said, dashing up the stairs to where Ethan was standing. "What's going on?" Inez stepped out of her room at the far end of the upper hallway. "Ethan? When did you arrive?" She dashed down the hall to where he stood. "And why don't you have a shirt on?" she asked, eyes wide and eyebrows high on her forehead. "It's Jack. He's having an asthma attack. We need help. Flamel called an ambulance." "Is he in there?" she said, pointing behind him. "Yeah," Ethan said, and they both turned and entered the conference room. Jack was lying on the floor, hands to his throat, mouth open wide, gasping for air. His eyes were bulging. "He doesn't have his inhaler." Ethan looked at Inez. "Do you know if there's anything we can do to help him until they get here?" Inez pulled her cell from her pocket and pressed a button. "Earl, it's Jack. We have him, but he's having an asthma attack and doesn't have an inhaler. You need to come right away. You have extras, I presume?" she asked into the phone. "Good. Yes. Take the portal. Be quick." She swiped the surface of her phone again and then put it back in her pocket. Moments later, a portal appeared on the wall behind the round table, and Uncle Earl strode through, the portal closing behind him. In his hand, he carried a small box, which he opened, then knelt next to Jack on the floor. "It's all right, son. I'm here, and I have your medicine," he said, removing the new inhaler from his box and quickly inserting it into Jack's mouth. Jack reached up and took hold of the device, closing his eyes and inhaling deeply. Removing it, he took a breath, then inserted it again, consuming another dose. Breathing more comfortably, he raised up on his elbows and the others in the room relaxed a bit. "Madam," Flamel said from the doorway, "the ambulance is here. What shall I tell them?" He looked at Inez expectantly. "I'll talk to them, Flamel," she said, getting up off the floor and glancing down at Earl. "We're all good here, then?" she asked, and waited for his affirmative response before turning to leave the room. "How are you here?" Jack looked up at Earl, his breathing still labored, but improving. "Let's talk about that after you've fully recovered." Earl pushed himself up off the floor and brushed the knees of his slacks. Reaching down, he offered Jack a hand. "Stop pretending like you care about me." Jack scooted back and turned toward Ethan, who was staring down at him from the corner of the room. "What's going on? Why did you bring me here, Ethan? And where are we?" Jack asked, standing up and staring accusingly back and forth at both of them. Ignoring the question, Earl interjected. "Ethan, nice to finally meet you. I'm your great-uncle Earl, your grandmother Lydia's brother." "Seriously? You're just going to blow me off like that?" Jack bellowed. "I want answers. You can't just kidnap me and then pretend like everything is normal." He looked at Ethan. "Answer me!" Ethan rolled his eyes and shoved dark curls away from his face, shrugging his left shoulder. "I think I'll let Auntie Inez explain all of that." Ethan then turned and walked out of the room. Jack's mouth dropped open as he stood gazing out the door. Clamping it shut again, he turned and faced his uncle. "Well?" His eyes were wide with expectation. Earl opened his mouth to speak when Inez entered the room. "Jack, I'm pleased to see that you're recovering from your incident." Her eyebrows raised, and the corners of her mouth curved slightly. "I'm sure you have lots of questions, and I fully intend to answer them for you. Let's get you settled into a room, and then we can talk over dinner." She turned to leave. "No, not good enough. I want answers now," Jack shouted at her. His voice was thin and raspy. Remembering his recent episode, he placed his hand on his chest and closed his eyes to calm himself. "Why aren't you angry at Ethan for shoving you through that portal? I would expect you to be really upset with him right now." He squinted his eyes, piecing his thoughts together. "I want to know why he brought me here. Where is this, by the way? And what do you intend to do with me?" Inez slowly turned, glaring down at him. "I will remind you that you are the child here, and you will do as you are told," Inez said coolly. "I will treat you with respect so long as you behave yourself. Otherwise, things may not be as pleasant for you as they otherwise could be." She stared him in the eye for a long moment before glancing sideways at Earl, tipping her chin and rolling her eyes. "To briefly answer your questions, you're in Stockholm, Sweden, and this is your new home. There are protection spells surrounding this house, and you'll have no access to a cell phone or other technology for contacting your friends in Ireland. So you'll want to get used to that idea. Resist, and you will be one miserable little boy. Cooperate, and eventually you could be very happy." Jack's head drooped with the enormity of her words. He was speechless. Turning, he looked pleadingly at his uncle. Earl simply raised his eyebrows, pushed the little round glasses up off the tip of his nose, and nodded to confirm what she said was true. But, Jack stammered. "But nothing. Accept your fate, and we will get along just fine. Now, follow me." She tossed a meaningful look in Earl's direction, and he crossed the room to stand directly behind Jack. Inez shot darts at Jack with her eyes before turning and exiting the room. 1 hour later. "I want details." Inez turned to look at Ethan, who was sitting on the pink and gold brocade couch across from her in the music room. The young man was no longer bare-chested, and it was obvious he had showered and changed clothes since the event with Jack in the upstairs meeting room. "Well, well, well. Have I got some new information that you're going to find very interesting?" he started, wearing the grin of a Cheshire cat on his face, sapphire blue eyes sparkling and eyebrows raised high on his forehead. "Don't be coy, nephew. Spill the news." She gazed at him over a china cup of steaming brew, never taking her eyes off of him for a moment. "There have been some very tasty developments we were not aware of. For instance, apparently, there is this magical golden telescope that Jack touched. Yes, that's what initiated his magical abilities. But what's been happening to him with that thing is going to blow your mind." "Interesting. Spare me the drama, Ethan. Just give me the facts." Inez appeared agitated, sitting forward on the edge of her seat. "Well, drumroll, please. Our grandmother Lydia has been contacting him through that thing." Inez's eyes were wild, and her mouth dropped open. She threw her hands in the air and shot up off the chair. "What?" she shrieked, blinking her eyes repeatedly and shaking her head back and forth several times. "How is that even possible?" She strode across the room, then turned to face him. "I'm serious. I don't have any other details because I didn't have enough time. Stupid kid burst into my bedroom while I was undressing. I was just getting ready to make a quick trip through the portal to tell you the amazing story, and he saw the glowing pendant around my neck. So I was forced to make a snap decision and grab him, taking him through with me. I was hoping to be able to snatch the telescope too, but that didn't happen." Inez stood silent for a long moment, then looking up at Ethan again. "How does he know it was his grandmother? Where? How? That is impossible." "All I know is that he recognized her from that huge portrait hanging on the wall at McPaden Manor." He shook his head. "I was hoping to get him to give me a demonstration. You know, show me how it works." He trailed off. Inez's head snapped up, and there was a new glimmer in her squinty eyes. "You're brilliant, nephew." She quickly strode to the table where her cell phone sat and picked it up, swiping across the screen. Okay, now that's enough for today. I'll wind up there, and next episode, we will begin with Chapter 6, Lydia and Bunko Kelly. And this will take place in Portland, Oregon, 1877. Alrighty, so that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this reading. If you have, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, so that you get, and ring the little bell so that you get notifications.